Music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Hello, and welcome to On the Aisle with me, Tom Alvarez. My guest on today's episode is Paul C. Daly, longtime Indiana arts leader, who was recently appointed Executive Director of Indy Fringe Theater. Join me now as I go on the aisle for a conversation with Paul.
Have you ever covered a carpet stain with a rug, ignored a leaky faucet, pretended your half-painted living room is supposed to look like that? Well, you're not alone. We've all got unfinished home projects. But there's an easier way. Thumbtack is the app that makes it easier to care for your home. Pull out your phone and in just a few taps, search, chat, and book highly rated pros right in your neighborhood. Download Thumbtack and start caring for your home the easier way.
Achieving a gorgeous grin from home isn't a total mystery with Bite Clear aligners. Just don't be surprised if all of your sleuthing friends start asking, "What's your secret?" Begin by ordering your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95. Bite Clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces. Plus, they offer flexible financing, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
Good afternoon, Paul, and welcome to On the Aisle. It's great to see you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Tom. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I mean, in the past, I've done this on my column, and now that I have this podcast, it's even better that I have an opportunity to introduce you to the community. And how has it been thus far? When did you start as the new executive director of Indy Fringe?
I started June 3rd, and it has been fantastic. It is really amazing, the people that I have met in this community, the things that they're doing. This is a neat place to be.
Mm-hmm. Have you made the rounds consciously to meet local arts figures? Tell me about who you've been talking to or meeting.
I have been very conscious and intentional about who I'm meeting. In fact, I'm spending the first 100 days in this position reaching out to the community and trying to find out where Indy Fringe fits in the ecosystem, what we're successful at, what maybe we can improve on. I started my meetings purposefully with the artists that had been associated with Indy Fringe. That's where I wanted to start. They're the heart of the organization. They're who we're here to support. So I wanted to make sure that I connected with them and found out what they wanted from us. And then I've expanded into some of the arts leaders, some of the organizations that are built to support arts, such as Indiana Arts Commission, Indy Arts Council, those kinds of places, meeting with the donors and supporters of Indy Fringe. I want to hear from everyone.
I was very impressed with the fact that you were doing your due diligence. I think that's very smart.
I appreciate that. I also don't know how you do it otherwise.
Good point. Exactly. So tell our listeners about your background.
So I've been in theater for more than 35 years. I started when I was a child doing children's theater in Kokomo, Indiana. I ended up going to Indiana
That's where
University.
you were born and raised, Kokomo?
I was born and raised in Kokomo. And while Kokomo is not famous for their art scene, they do have a very strong children's theater program there. And I fell in love with it immediately. We can go back. My sister is 5 years older than me. And having an older sibling, anybody who's the younger sibling knows that their older sibling is better than them at everything. Mm-hmm. And my sister went to audition for Wizard of Oz, and I got dragged along because what else was my mom going to do with me? And halfway through, they asked for anybody interested in auditioning for Munchkins to come up, and my mom kind of pushed me up on stage. And I was cast, and my sister, who was better than me at everything, was not.
Oh, my.
I was sold on theater ever since. I've been with it like I said, for more than 35 years. I went to IU for undergrad in theater. I ended up in New York, where I reconnected with a friend who'd been in the grad program at IU. We started a theater company there, Rabbit Hole Ensemble. And actually, our first year of existence, we performed in the New York City Fringe Festival, where I really felt like that festival validated us as artists. Since then, I had a son. I've had 3 sons, actually, but our first child was born, and my wife and I decided we couldn't simultaneously raise a child and a theater company in New York City. I ended up getting a job in Bloomington, Indiana, running the John Waldron Arts Center, which had 2 performance spaces, 5 art galleries, 4 classrooms, and really, really loved serving the community. Finding out, just like I'm doing here, finding out what's needed, where the gaps are, and how we can fill those spaces.
And how long were you there?
I was there for about 10 years.
Oh, okay. Did you accomplish everything that you had set out to?
Ooh, what a great question. I probably hardly accomplished the things I set out to accomplish, but I ended up accomplishing the things that the community needed, right? Actually, that's a really good point. That was what I learned over those 10 years, is that as a nonprofit organization, we aren't here to serve the executive director. That's not what the organization is there for. We're here to serve the people in the community. And so what the executive director is interested in takes a back seat to what the community is interested in.
And what did the community of Bloomington, what were they interested in?
So, as I'm sure you've experienced, any community changes over the period of 10 years. And what was wanted and needed in the beginning of those 10 years was very different than what was wanted and needed at the end of those 10 years. When I came in, people were very interested in a community arts center, a place that was a hub for all of the arts happening in Bloomington. And that's what we focused on, creating classes that served the community, opening up our performance spaces to the groups that wanted to perform, and using the art galleries as a place to start artists' careers as well as showcase artist careers. And I would say that over the course of the 10 years, the only one that remained consistent really was those art galleries. The performance spaces, it was valuable to keep them open for the community, but we also started student productions, where the building actually, when I came on board, it had been a community arts center, and Ivy Tech in Bloomington was looking to be a comprehensive community college, and they didn't really have the arts. And the Arts Center opened up that possibility of truly becoming comprehensive, particularly an arts center for the community. It could be a comprehensive community college. So when they came in to serve both those communities, Ivy Tech and Bloomington community, there did come an opening where the education of technicians and artists was needed. And we were able to start a theater productions program for our students where we did a whole season of shows. We ended up getting classes in place that transferred over to IU. And so that was very successful. That started in 2012, ran through 2020 with COVID, certainly marked the end of that, as it did so many other things happening across the world, really. And with the classes, that one shifted the most over the course of 10 years. Sometimes the community was looking particularly for children's programming. There was a period of time where they really wanted to see programming for older adults, keeping them engaged mentally and socially. We experimented with classes that happened across the community. That one was ever changing.
How did Cardinal Company, theater company, fit into all this?
Cardinal was our main production company that used the spaces, and they rented space from us.
Okay, so they were a leasee. They weren't part of your official organization.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We did have a true tenant in the space, which was WFHB, the community radio station.
Okay.
And we gave them space rent-free. We felt that that was a good match for a community college, was to have a community radio station. Cardinal, very specifically, was a regional theater doing the work of a regional theater. And that didn't fit in quite so well with
And you know,
Company.
they featured a number of Indianapolis actors that I know who are professional, and they did some excellent work.
Yes. Oh, they absolutely did excellent work. And I actually performed with them. I performed with most of the companies in town. I have always really thought of myself as an actor, and my day job has been executive director.
Tell me about some of your credits.
Well, you know, most recent, just to go off of that, last year, this isn't my most recent, but last year I did perform at Indy Fringe. A friend of mine wrote a show and wanted to get it produced, and that's what Indy Fringe is excellent at doing, providing a space for artists to try something out. So I was in a show there called Mush last year. It was a two-hander. I played a father, and the father-son both dealt with issues of alcoholism. And we did some talkbacks, and that was a very powerful show.
Who produced the show?
Producer was Joel Watson, the person who wrote it, self-produced it. And he's somebody that I've worked with in Bloomington many times. He's a really talented, multi-talented person. He's a technician, actor, writer.
How was it received?
Although ticket sales were not extraordinary, the people that saw it loved it.
Did you know then that you were drawn to Indy Fringe, or of course, how would you have known that the opening would come about?
So I absolutely knew I was drawn to Indy Fringe. Indy Fringe does everything that I love. So I do like minimalism, and you're almost necessarily forced into minimalism doing a show in the festival because you have limited time to do tech. And you have to be in and out of the space. I also love a space that allows people to try, to take risks. I love taking risks as an artist. I don't ever do a show anymore. I don't ever do a show unless I walk into it going, well, I don't know how to do this. I find that's the real joy anymore doing theater, is exploring and finding out how to do something I've never done before. And Indy Fringe allows artists of all levels to do that.
Did you see a lot of shows? Or is this the first year, or you've seen them in the past, Indy Fringe seasons?
So this will be my first season where I'm going to see a lot of Indy Fringe shows, and I plan on seeing my coworkers laugh at me, but I plan on seeing all of them.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, it'll.
How many shows this year?
There are 70 different groups coming in.
That's an expansion over the last few years, right?
I think it's pretty close to last year, but we're putting it in a more compact time frame.
That's right. That's right. I know that you've made some significant changes, but we'll get into that in a minute. Tell me about, how did you find Indy Fringe and how did they find you? I know that you were familiar with, of course. So when you saw that there was an opening, did you jump right on it?
I did. Actually, I applied for the position a year ago when Jennifer Cooper, the previous executive director, also applied, and we were the two finalists. And so I know the board, the way they talk about it is they flipped a coin in making that final decision. And of course, Jennifer has now found her home and where she belongs. And I feel like I've found my home and where I belong. So I think
it was all meant to be.
Yeah.
You think? Yeah. And this far, how do you feel about your board and your staff and volunteers?
I couldn't be luckier. I am amazed at the commitment that everyone has to this space. Although I think that also is part of what drew me to it, the community itself that Indy Fringe creates. The board is just fantastic. Bob DeVos, the chair, is really helpful and there every step of the way to help guide me and support me. The board has jumped in and taken over tasks while I'm getting settled. They're incredible. The volunteers that show up and do show after show for us put so much of their time in, and they just clearly love the place. And the staff is also a really incredible and devoted staff. So I'm just incredibly
And
lucky.
how about the artists who are involved? I know they come and go, of course, but I know that many are involved year after year after year.
Yeah, so like I said, I spent the first part of my time in the role listening to the artists. And I know you know this as an artist. It's just fun to sit down and talk to artists. Mm-hmm. That's where I feel comfortable. I understand where they're coming from. I know the challenges they face. I face them too. I know the joys they come across. They're my people. I relate to them and love talking to them.
And so let's talk about the way the changes that you're implementing from past Indy Fringe Festival, Indy Fringe, the organization.
Yeah, so
which sometimes people don't understand that the festival is one thing, but you have an organization and the festival is under their auspices. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's one of the things I've come across as I talk to people. I'll ask them, what do you think of Indy Fringe? And their question back to me is, the theater or the festival? Mm-hmm. And so I think we need to do a better job of separating those out.
It can be complicated when you have a brand and you have sub-brands, if you will.
Yeah.
That it's an umbrella for other things as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. And there are people who are shocked that we do things year round. Mm-hmm. Like all they know is the festival. Mm-hmm. So we need to do a better job of communicating that and helping everyone understand what we are.
Well, structurally, I know that it's a whole different arena for its executive director now. You have relinquished one of your roles. Tell us about that.
So as executive director this year, because I came in on June 3rd, obviously that's really close to the festival, which runs August 15th through the 25th this year. And the board very wisely felt that we needed to bring somebody in to run the festival this year. So Callie Burkhartz, who is everywhere in the community, artist, educator, and all-around wonderful person, has come on as the festival director and is running the festival for us this year.
And then what will be your role?
What the board has really tasked me with is, I would say, twofold. One is being the face in the community. When people think of Indy Fringe, they need to think of me. And two is strategically thinking about what Indy Fringe is going to be for the next decade.
And what will that be?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer yet. So I'm still taking input in from the community. If anybody that's listening to this wants to reach out to me and tell me their thoughts, I am more than open to that. And what I have said is that 100 days from when I first started, I will lay out guideposts for what we're going to be for the next decade. So on September 12th, we're going to make an announcement about what we're hoping to be doing for the next decade.
It's like your vision board, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. But at this point, what is your vision? What is Paul's vision for what he would like to see at this point, until you get that input?
Well, what I know is that there are a few things I know that I keep coming back to. And so one is that we're here to support artists. So I'm looking for the ways that we can best support artists. I know that what people love about the Fringe is that it offers opportunities and the chance to see things that they'll never see otherwise. And I also know some of these challenges, such as how do we communicate what we are, how is Indy Fringe a theater, and how is Indy Fringe a festival? And so in that frame, I think that we need to be looking at what we are year round and how we're supporting artists year round and how we're making these kind of wonderful, quirky performances happen year round. And then the Indy Fringe Festival is simply a piece of what we're doing, a large piece, of course, but a piece of the whole. So that's what I'm looking at shaping and figuring out.
Well, as we discussed, and again, for purposes of transparency, I joked that our company, Magic Thread Cabaret, and our sort of umbrella company, Klein and Alvarez Productions, it was because of Indy Fringe and Pauline Moffat, who guided us through the whole process. And, I think that our experience with Indy Fringe, we were examples of what Indy Fringe is all about. 10 years ago when we did our musical Call with the Musical, it premiered at the Indy Fringe Festival that year, and it was wildly successful. And then we went on to create a full-scale musical, and it premiered at now the District Theater. And, we're no longer going to participate in the festival because we feel that we've moved on from that because we've become our brand, thanks to Indy Fringe, gave us the exposure that we needed in terms of donor support, audiences, and all of those things. So I feel personally that we benefited greatly from it. And so I think we're a model of what can happen. And I know there are other artists who also have the same experience as we did. You did what your ideals indicate that you want to do, that is to help artists grow their companies and themselves as artists. So I can speak with authority that it's a concept that not only works, but there are plenty of examples of all over Indianapolis of what Indy Fringe can do in terms of giving people a hand to succeed. So I'm thrilled that it's going to continue to grow and develop, and that you are going to spend or give more focus to artists' needs. I think that's really good. Sometimes people get lost in their internal stuff, the structure, that kind of stuff, and lose sight of artists' needs. So it sounds, you being an artist, I think that has a lot to do with it.
I'm sure my background feeds into that. And I mean, I get it. In order to support those artists, we have to find a way to survive.
Well, there's that too. You can't just, it's a business too.
Yeah.
You can have all the art you want, but if you don't have the business to support it, what good is it?
Yeah. And actually, I mean, I just love that Indy Fringe has helped you and your group succeed the way it has. And I wonder, and maybe this is a conversation for you and I later, but how could they have done it better? And are there ways that we could, I know one of the things that we just don't have time for is helping these organizations figure out the business side of things. And maybe there's classes we can provide there.
I've always said that. I'm sure that there's funding out there when someone would support some sort of educational program where you can teach people how to market, how to raise funds, how to apply for a 501c3, all of those things on the business side, how to advertise, how to do a special event. It seems like, and I know this from my viewpoint, based on my experiences as a journalist and covering the arts all the years I have, that artists oftentimes, they're always reinventing the wheel, always trying to figure out how to write a press release, always figuring out how to, in the fundraising, that's a whole field that, how to do a one-on-one solicitation, how to find sponsors. That's a lot. It's overwhelming, and I see a lot of artists fail because they don't know how to budget their time. And so, yes, I think there's a great need for that kind of education. If there isn't a place where people can go I don't think there are theater programs around town, classes for students, but I don't really think there's any. Do you know of any kind of classwork that you could take? In any program in this town? Did IU have classes like that?
Well, what you're saying, and this is exactly what I see all the time, is that artists are expected to have 2 degrees, a business degree and an arts degree. And no other field do we expect people to have 2 degrees, maybe in teaching.
And as you know, if you don't have that expertise, you have to depend on your board. Now, that's a whole other thing. Board development, teaching that to artists, if you got a 501c3, you have to have a board that fills in all the gaps that you're expected to do. And if you don't have that support, so it's a kind of a catch-22, isn't it?
It very much so. And, I do see one-off classes here and there offering these kinds of skills, but those are easy to miss, not hear about. I do think that there could be great value in Indy Fringe consistently offering these kinds of
I think it's a brilliant
classes.
idea. I really do. I suspect there are a lot of people in the arts community and arts administrators who would be willing to volunteer some time because, arts administration in itself is a great aspiration for artists because ultimately a lot of companies that survive, you got to have a foot in both, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you've been in arts administration and you're an actor, so you've learned how to marry both, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah, I've done both sides of it, and there's joy in both, really.
I think so, too. I always tell people I love fundraising. I'm really good at it because I'm also good at relationships. I'm an actor. You have to have personality. You need to be out there. You need to be the face. I tell people that all the time. You need to be the face of your organization. That's what people want to see.
Yes.
People who make financial contributions. Companies, they ask you questions about how you're running your business. You better be prepared, right?
That's exactly right. And I think we know that nobody gives money to a building. They give money to another human.
That's been my experience. They give money to you because they like you and they want you to succeed. Of course, the work speaks for itself, too. I mean, it really makes a difference. I know a lot of successful arts administrators do quite well if they make it a point in their marketing strategy, if you are a public relations strategy, to invite people, comp people, to come see the shows because they got to see the work, really.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you need to get people in the space to see it so that they know what's happening. Yeah, we do that kind of work. Yes. So, for instance, tonight we have Lady Bits, which is a show where lady comedians do bits. And it's a very funny show that a board member is bringing, I think, 8 guests to come see. And she bought the tickets, so nobody's losing income because, again, we are looking to support the artists. Something that we don't really talk about at Indy Fringe that we should talk about more is that over our 20 years of existence, we have given back to the artists over $2.35 million. And so while we do want to get people in to see the work, and we do comp tickets, of course, at times, we try not to because then we're taking money from the artists.
Of course, I understand that.
And we are here to support them.
That's very important. And you'll see more and more of that spirit in the community with a lot of theater companies, that they make it a point to give stipends to their performers, even if they're very small and all they can afford, because it helps the artists to know that they're being valued. There's a lot to be said for volunteer theater, too, and we have our share of community theaters. And, it's not their business model to pay their people. I was just talking with Marnie Lemons on the show. She was on a couple of weeks ago, and she talked about how sometimes they face criticism. Well, why don't you pay your artists? You have these lavish productions. It's a professionally managed theater. Well, the value for them there's value in volunteerism because what they get back is to be supported by all these incredible professional artists. The scenery, the lighting, the sound is all like Broadway quality. I mean, there's a lot of value to having the opportunity to perform with that kind of support, So anyway, there are all kinds of ways you can support artists, but not everybody has that model. But for those who do, I feel very proud of Indianapolis and the number of small theaters with tiny budgets, but they make it a point of paying people something,
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, you mentioned being proud of Indianapolis. Something that I had no idea until I moved here and started talking to everybody is how much theater is happening in this community and how many small groups there are. I think over 200.
And I think it's like what happened with us, though. A lot of those companies got their footing in Indy Fringe. They came from Indy Fringe.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. We talk all the time in life in general about how you don't learn much from success. You learn a lot more from your failures. But what we never talk about is not getting the opportunity at all. You can't possibly learn or grow or do anything if you don't have the opportunity. And that's what Indy Fringe does, is give all of these people the opportunity, even if they do one show at Indy Fringe, to then go, I can do this. And I can do this on my own. Great. That's a success.
Once in a while you hear cynical people out there say, well, it's not curated, so it's a hit and miss. You're going to, you get what you pay for. When you show up, do your research, or you're just going to have to take your chance. But that's not what it's about. It's not about that. It's not about being selective like that and being an arbiter of what's good and what's bad. Fortunately.
That's exactly right. I love the MCU movies, but we don't need another one of them. Let's just try some other things.
Exactly.
Let's have some diversity.
Exactly. Can you give me a preview of what we're going to see this summer?
We do have some international groups coming. We have people from around the country as well. As far as specifics, we just talked about we don't curate.
Sure.
So I'll just let you come and see what you see and discover for yourself.
Where are you right now? Have you selected your participants yet?
We have. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yep. We've got our 70 shows.
And they've all been notified?
They've all been notified. We have all the information. We're at the point where the ticket sales are live. You can get your tickets now.
How much are they this year?
Generally, they're $20 a show. We did give the option to artists to determine their own price. So we have some artists who are doing pay what you will.
Oh.
We have a couple artists who are charging a bit more than that $20.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of an experiment to see how that goes.
And what is your cut this year?
We take 30%, so 70% goes back to the artist.
And give me the days for our listeners, more details.
Festival runs August 15th through the 25th this year, so over 11 days. We have 70 artists, 250 performances, and 6 venues.
What are the 6 venues?
The 6 venues are the 2 spaces at Indy Fringe, the 2 spaces at the District Theater, Dance Kaleidoscope, and White Rabbit Cabaret.
DK is new.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, we're really excited that Dance Kaleidoscope has come on.
And for those not familiar, what is Dance Kaleidoscope and where is it?
So Dance Kaleidoscope is a dance studio by Circle City Industrial Complex. And they do classes, they do performances. They're really a wonderful organization. If you don't know them, you should definitely check them out.
Okay, and then what was the last one?
White Rabbit Cabaret.
Oh, in Fountain Square.
In
so
Fountain
you're
Square.
Really spreading out.
We are, yeah. We're trying.
You're not married any longer to either Mass Avenue or off Mass Avenue.
No, I mean, technically 4 of the venues are on Mass Ave, since it's the 2 in Indy Fringe and 2 in District. So that's where we're concentrated. But we are seeing what it's like to go out a little bit more of the community. One of the things that we have seen is that we're a real success story for the city. When Indy Fringe started on Mass Ave, that area looked completely different than it does now.
I know.
And the businesses and the excitement, the buzz that happens there now is due in large part to the work that Indy Fringe did.
I know. Indirectly, that's why the East End became what it was. And Tom Batista, that was his vision, and he was one of the early Indy Fringe founders, was he not?
He was. He was our first board chair. And he's a really neat guy, fascinating human that I met with to talk to. And him and people like him having that vision to create Indy Fringe and how it has transformed that part of town, I have to wonder, what more can we do for the community? What other places can we help transform?
So is Tom still involved at all?
No, he's got his own projects. Yeah. He does Can now.
I profiled him in my column, and I want him on the show because he's always got something up his sleeve. Is he still involved in Indy Fringe other than coming to shows?
No, he's not really at this point. He told me that his interest is in starting and envisioning things. And so Indy Fringe is way past that point.
Yeah. And how about Frank Basile, who helped finance the building itself?
Yes.
His name, is on the building or named after him, Basile Theater.
Our larger space is the Basile Theater, and Frank, as you know, is just a lovely man. I met with him, and I was so impressed with his knowledge and experience and his kindness that I asked if he would serve as my unofficial advisor. And the graciousness that he's shown every time I've seen him, he said yes.
That's great. Good for you. What is your relationship with city government? I'm Mayor Hoxett.
At this point, I don't have a relationship with the city yet. I definitely am looking to build one. The deputy mayor and I are looking for a time to meet, so have been in touch there.
And how about Visit Indy?
Visit Indy, we are connected with, as well as MAMA, which is the Mass Ave Merchants Association. We are part of the Chamber of Commerce.
Are you finding with all those huge sports events, do any of those attendees show up at Indy Fringe events or other arts events to your knowledge?
Yes.
I'm told that concierges around the city and hotels go through training, and so they know what's going on in the arts world. Sure. Is that true? Do you know?
I don't know if that's true. I hope it is.
I really have heard that. So anything new happening with the physical building, the Basile Theater?
I do know that we're looking at transforming the space outside of Indy Fringe, turning it into a more usable space. I mean, it's...
no more parking.
No more parking.
Depending on whether it rains or not.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about shifting how the stairs...
That's a lot of policing for you guys anyway, to figure out when you can let people park and when they can't, blah, blah, blah.
It is, yes. But we do work with a partner who put the parking in place, and they police it during the day.
Plans for the Fringe open up the fourth wall, if you will, of Indy 11?
Yeah, so we've had some shifts. Indy 11 now sponsors the Fringe on Wheels programming. So it's the van that goes out into the community, and performers can set up a stage from the van and perform.
I know it. Well, we used it for 2 different fundraisers, and we put on previews of our Indy Fringe shows, and people loved it. Having that pull up in their backyards, it really was, and the people who came were dazzled because of the graphics on it, the lights, and everything.
It's really cool. And so it's now the Fringe on Wheels, sponsored by Indy 11, and the theater space that had been the Indy 11 Theater is now the Everwise Theater, named after Everwise Credit Union.
Oh, yeah. They've got naming rights to the amphitheater at White River State Park.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's why I've heard that name. Wow.
Yeah.
So they're becoming a bigger presence.
Yeah, we're really excited. They are the festival sponsor this year.
Oh, really? Well, how can people support Indy Fringe?
We're always looking for volunteers. The festival is such a huge event that we need bodies there to help keep it running. And of course, financial support so that we can do our work in supporting artists is always appreciated. And you can go online to indyfringe.org and find ways to either volunteer or donate.
What is your message to Indianapolis now with the advent of your leadership?
My message to Indianapolis is, and this may be a bit long, but the arts are what make a community exciting and improve quality of life. And what we do at Indy Fringe is give the opportunity to artists to find themselves and to grow.
And what do you have to say directly to artists?
We're your new home.
Mm-hmm. And so having that opportunity that you have now, what do you say to people about why, if they come to Indianapolis, that they should check us out or check out the festival? And to anybody, we want to be a major cultural attraction in this city because of the benefit to the economy. Those of us in the arts have been trying to make that case for years. We're not just like a luxury. We create jobs for artists, but, there's a whole business element to that. And what do you say to that, people listening in other communities or cities or whatever?
The phrase hidden gem is used far too often, but Indianapolis truly is that. I lived in New York for 10 years. I've lived in Boston, D.C., spent a lot of time in Chicago, and those are all wonderful cities. But they're hard to navigate. They're hard to be able to afford. And Indianapolis is so accessible and so affordable, and there is so much happening
and
here.
Manageable.
And yeah, exactly. And Indy Fringe is one of those really special events for any place. Although we are a little bit beyond Mass Ave this year, we're completely walkable.
Speaking of walkable, did you and your family move downtown by any chance? Or where are you located, if I may ask?
So my family and I still live in Bloomington. I commute every day, but I did buy a house up here with my sister and brother-in-law, who also commutes to Indy every day from Bloomington.
Oh, wow.
And so now we have a place to stay when we need it. During the festival, I'm certainly going to be up here every day, all day.
Pied-à-terre, huh?
Yeah.
Well, what a delight to talk with you, and welcome to Indy, and I wish you nothing but success, and I look forward to seeing some shows and maybe writing about a few here and there. It's always very difficult to choose, but I know so many people in the arts community. It's often very easy to determine, but I also try to see those shows with unknowns, people that I've never seen before. I like to take risks, and that's the whole spirit of the festival anyway, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. I'll see you up the road.
Great.
Thank you.
Our thanks go out to our media sponsor, Urban Times. Urban Times is a monthly news magazine which serves as the official neighborhood newsletter for 16 Indianapolis neighborhoods, offering news about development, arts and entertainment, and from the business community.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.